Greetings, my friends. mkwann here with part 2 of the Hispaniola Susquehanna mystery connection. And in part 2, we are going to add more meat to the concept that was introduced in part 1. In part 1, I demonstrated the initial link is established as both of these physical parts of Earth, Hispaniola and the Susquehanna, the body of water, which is known as the Susquehanna River, which also includes the Chesapeake Bay, how these two are linked through the mythology of history, and particularly the narrative of the spread of what I'm going to call globalism. That's, the current terminology for it, but the spread of a global culture which began with the age of navigation, which wove its first colony in the New World on Hispaniola. And then 115 years later, we saw the first colony of the British Empire, the eventual victor, if you will, of the Age of Navigation, which took place at the base of the Susquehanna waterway. And so that's where it begins. But today we're going to go deeper and look specifically at the connection these two share through the sport of baseball. And we're going to go deeper then into looking into what baseball actually is, because we live in an esoteric world. We live in an occulted world. That's probably a better way of putting it. A hidden world where everything from the thoughts of our subconscious to the actions of day-to-day paradigm living their true meanings are hidden from most waking consciousness. So the Susquehanna River can be called a lot of things, but it's very fair to refer to it as the baseball river. And the reason I say that is, first, the Baseball Hall of Fame, it's right here in Cooperstown, New York, is located 2 blocks away from right here, where the Susquehanna River, the oldest continuously flowing current on Earth, begins its movement. This plaque is placed right here in physical reality, where it is marked in the paradigm as to what it is. And it says, this marker signifies where the beautiful Susquehanna River begins its 444-mile journey to meet the Chesapeake Bay. A more accurate way of saying that, in my opinion, would be where the 440-mile journey of the river transitions into the Susquehanna Bay. It doesn't meet the bay. The bay is the same part of the river. It's actually the flooded valley of the river, but that's a different topic. So there's that the beginning of the river is marked with the location of the Baseball Hall of Fame. And then secondly, Little League, the official organization for youth baseball, was founded and incorporated in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, which is the same place in which the Little League World Series, which is actually taking place as I'm recording this video, the Little League World Series also takes place in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. As you can see here on this map of Williamsport, Pennsylvania, if you look closely, there's Williamsport and there's South Williamsport. And right here is the Little League World Series complex. And this blue line, which is right here, which corresponds to a river, and that is the Susquehanna River. On the bigger map, we can see right here, this is the a more accurate overview of the body of water known as the Susquehanna River, and how it includes the Chesapeake Bay or the Susquehanna Bay. Right here is the Baseball Hall of Fame, and right here is Williamsport. So let's go, and I just demonstrated why the Susquehanna River is the baseball river. Let's connect this to, Hispaniola. We've already shown the connection through mythology. And we're going to see how this is also another mythological, or is grounded. The story begins in another myth. But before that, I don't know if this is how it actually works, but it's a way which we can envision it. The current, the energy, the flow of whatever a river is, and whatever the Susquehanna River is, it flows all the way down here, and then through the process of claiming this is the first fruit of the age of navigation or the colonization of the New World, and then this is the first fruit of the British Empire, where the eventual entity which, through its relationship with the United States, brought a singular culture across Earth. This is the link. And so it comes downstream, and then it shows itself or materializes or manifests down here in Haiti, or in Hispaniola, which is half Haiti and half Dominican Republic. And whether what I'm about to go and show you is the plan, I'm not necessarily suggesting that, but what I am suggesting is that when you plant seeds in fertile ground, crops grow. And so let's go see how these crops grew. Let's go see what I'm talking about. So the Susquehanna River is the baseball river, and Hispaniola per capita produces more elite baseball players than anywhere in the world. Specifically, what I'm referring to are baseball players from the Dominican Republic. Let me unpack this for just a moment. Major League Baseball in the United States is our symbol, if you will, of, and it's not even just a symbol, it literally is the stage where the world's finest baseball players play. There are other countries with professional leagues, but the major league in the United States is, it's the Broadway it's the big show. And one of the things which I think is interesting about baseball as an example, if you're familiar with the Susquehanna mystery, and if not, I recommend you go and search to find the video. I did an updated video, I think in 2022, on the Susquehanna mystery. But in the Susquehanna mystery, we see three primary first fruits that were planted on the oldest river in a form of river goddess worship. And that is the birthplace of globalism. That's the first permanent colony of the British Empire. That's Jamestown. We see the advent of the computer technology industry with the first computer located at Aberdeen Proving Grounds, right here, Aberdeen Proving Grounds. It's an army base. ENIAC, like Enochian magic, it sounds like Enochian magic, is located right here. And then right here is where Edison developed his first power plant, which distributes electricity using the positive, negative, and neutral schematic of delivering electricity. So the delivery of electricity, the delivery or the introduction of computer technology and globalism, they all took place in, the first fruits were all put on the altar of the Susquehanna River. But what really manifests in Hispaniola, where, what we're talking about today, is baseball. And we're going to get into, the significance of Baseball Hall of Fame and Little League, well, primarily Baseball Hall of Fame in a moment. But the reason why, I believe that is so much more, or the reason why that shows up or has manifested on Hispaniola as opposed to Hispaniola becoming why is it not then Silicon Valley? Why is it, why is electricity, why doesn't it not have the best electrical grids in the world? Baseball is the most natural. It's the most democratic of the different offerings that have been placed upon the Susquehanna River. And so what I mean by that is anyone can play baseball. Not anyone can just go and learn coding. Not anyone can just go and build electrical infrastructure. But baseball is going to unfold naturally. The kids play it. They just naturally play that. They could have played anything. They could have played soccer or basketball or, other sports or no sports at all, I suppose. Children are always playing games. But baseball took root there, and it flourished in a way like we don't see it flourish anywhere else in the world. So let me show you what I mean by that. Okay. So this here is a chart which shows the home origin country of the different Major League Baseball players and the countries which have the most amount of baseball players. So we see United States at 1,057, followed by the Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Cuba, Puerto Rico. The list kind of goes on. But what we want to do is really appreciate the uniqueness of how many elite baseball players, and that's what I'm just going to call any player in the major league, how many came from Dominican Republic versus, how many came from the United States, Venezuela, Cuba, and Puerto Rico, and so forth. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at it and think about it in the same way which you would compare prices in the grocery store. Like you can go to the grocery store. In this example right here, we're looking at avocado oil. And this right here is 1 liter of avocado oil is $15.99. And this one is 2 liters for $19.99. And, on the first glance, you'd be like, oh, this is the cheaper or the less expensive of these two avocado oils. In the same way, you'd be like, oh, look, the United States put out 1,057, or 70% of all major league players come from the United States. The United States puts out the most amount of baseball players. And that's true to an extent that the United States puts out the most amount of elite baseball players, just as it's true that $15.99 is less expensive than $19.99. But when you take in consideration what you're getting for $15.99 versus $19.99, you're getting 1 liter versus 2 liters. And when you compare the prices by a standard unit of measurement, in this example, 1 liter, we can see a more accurate comparison. So this actually costs $15.99 for 1 liter, and this costs $9.99 for 1 liter, where this appears to be, with that information, with that way of comparing, it becomes much more clear that this is actually a much more inexpensive, you're paying less for this avocado oil. So we're going to use this logic to then go look at the baseball players. And we're going to do that by looking at the population size of each of the countries. We'll use these top 4 here. And so how you would do that, or what we're going to do with this, there's a couple different ways in which you can do it. We're going to use our standard comparison of a population of 11 million, the population of Dominican Republic. So what we're going to have to do is get the U.S., this 1,057, in the appropriate proportion, as if the United States only had 11 million for population. Or maybe said another way, like how many baseball players for every 11 million Americans are in the major league. And you do that, how we do that is we divide the population of the United States, 333, divided by 11, we get this ratio, this 30.3. And then we divide this number, this 1,057, by the 30.3. And it will give us the appropriate proportion to the Dominican Republic. And then I did the same thing with Venezuela. Venezuela has a population of 28 million, so 28 divided by 11, and that comes to 2.5. And then you divide this 106 by 2.5. And we see Cuba has a population almost the exact same as the Dominican Republic. So we do all those calculations, and this is what we see. So this is the number of major league players per population of 11 million. So Dominican Republic with 11 million put out 171 players. Venezuela, when you take in consideration their population and put it in proportion to 11 million, they've put out 42 players for every 11 million in population. The USA puts out 35 major league players for every 11 million, and Cuba puts out 33 for every 11 million. And we could see there's like a general consistency in this ratio of 11 million to like in the 30s or 40s. And the Dominican Republic is 4 to 5 times greater than that. Like the number of major league players by population is just extraordinarily higher in the Dominican Republic. And again, like I'm not saying like any about like the sport or the athletes from Dominican Republic and anything about baseball. What I'm doing is I'm demonstrating this interesting link between Cuba, or Hispaniola, not Cuba, Hispaniola, which is half Dominican, half Haiti. I talked a little bit more about Haiti in the first video, and we're seeing this relationship between the baseball river and how it materializes or unfolds naturally in experiential reality. Hopefully I made that clear. To me, that was pretty obviously significant when you see an anomaly like this. And then also, just because we're talking numbers, I mentioned the marker. The Susquehanna River begins its 444-mile journey. I don't know who's writing this script, but then the population, from what Google decides to show me on the United States, is 333. And then, these are the real populations which I'm interested in, the United States and Dominican Republic. And Dominican Republic's population, 1123, lines up with Fibonacci sequence. 1123 are the first 4 numbers of the Fibonacci sequence. So that's just kind of a side note. I know a lot of you guys like to follow the numbers, so we did that. So, but we're just getting started. Like that was the like, okay, that's kind of interesting. Well, where are we going with this, or why is this significant? Because ultimately what we're doing is we're collapsing narratives. We're collapsing stories that exist in the occulted subconscious of the collective mind. It's all right around us, but no one's really seeing it on a much greater scale than Super Bowl halftime shows or Illuminati symbols in movies. Those are things as well. So let's go back to this. I mentioned many times about the idea of myth and how myth and story are woven into the land. So myth exists purely in the realm of consciousness and the imagination, in the non-physical realm of a human being. But once it is tied to physical reality, or even more specifically to land, because you could also tie in myth and story to object, but land is different, probably even more significant. Regardless if myth is factual or not, life can grow upon it. That was kind of what I was talking about in the first video, and kind of poked holes in the stories with Christopher Columbus and Francis or John Smith, excuse me. So the thing which is so great about baseball and its relationship with the Susquehanna River is what I'm describing about myths being woven into the landscape, and then they become real. That's not just like an abstract concept with baseball. It's like a demonstrable proof, And so what do I mean by that? The baseball's connection with the Susquehanna starts with a myth accepted as truth. It's known as the Doubleday myth. Today in baseball, a lie about how baseball was invented is born. And that article is talking about the Doubleday myth. And the Doubleday myth is the claim that the sport of baseball was invented in 1839 by future American Civil War General Abner Doubleday in Cooperstown, New York. So without the Doubleday myth, which says that Abner Doubleday invented baseball in Cooperstown, there would be no Baseball Hall of Fame on the Susquehanna River. There would be no Baseball Hall of Fame on the Susquehanna River. It says right here, the Baseball Hall of Fame Museum was built in the village that served as the location of Doubleday's alleged first game. So without this story, without this myth, this known myth, like within baseball historians, like the story goes that Abner Doubleday invented baseball as a young man in Cooperstown, and that was propagated through baseball itself, and we're going to get into it, the organization of baseball. When the historians begin to look at the evidence behind that claim, like it just kind of falls apart. And so that's why it's called the Doubleday myth. And so despite the fact that no one really takes it seriously, it's still taken seriously enough that this is where we're going to go build the Baseball Hall of Fame. So let's go look a little bit deeper to see who is the man who's responsible for the myth's acceptance of truth, or at least where the myth began. And his name is Albert Goodwill Spalding. And he was an American pitcher, manager, and executive in the early years of professional baseball, and the co-founder of Spalding Sporting Goods Company. He played Major League Baseball between 71 and 78. He set the trend when he started wearing a baseball glove. So this guy started wearing a baseball glove. And later, once he retired and he remained active with the Chicago White Stockings, he became president and then part owner. And then later in life, he called for the commission, the Major League Commission, that investigated the origins of baseball. They wanted to find out where it was. They really wanted to prove, or so the story goes, they wanted to demonstrate that baseball was a game of American origins. And so he commissioned an investigation to get to the origins of baseball, and that investigation came to the conclusion that Abner Doubleday invented it at Cooperstown, and then Spalding falsely credited. He was the head of the baseball commission at the time, and he said, yes, Abner Doubleday created the game of baseball. And so we can see in Spalding's book, he expressed delight that the American Army general, Doubleday, had been found as baseball's creator. How that's generally accepted through mainstream kind of sports is like the whole thing was a publicity stunt anyway, because Major League Baseball wanted to establish baseball as purely an American sport, or grounded in American, not just for Americans to play, but it began in America. And so it was always a publicity stunt. And of course, they're going to put forward as the inventor of the game someone who already has a very positive connotation in the collective American consciousness, which was Civil War hero and General Abner Doubleday. So here's Abner Doubleday. I mean, this guy comes into question too. He was a career United States officer and Union Major General in the American Civil War. So Abner Doubleday fired the first shot of Fort Sumter, opening the Battle of the War. So the first battle of the Civil War was the Battle of Fort Sumter, and they're telling you that Abner Doubleday, he shot he fired the first shot. So he fired the first shot of the Civil War, and then he was also the hero for the North. The kind of like behind the scenes, he played a pivotal role as a hero at the Battle of Gettysburg, which is where the Civil War, where the tide turned from the South winning to the North winning. Gettysburg was his finest hour, but his relief of General George Meade caused him lasting enmity between the two. What's interesting about that is, if you know about the organization, the NSA, their headquarters is Fort Meade, named after this guy, but it's just a pivot right there. Abner Doubleday is said, so again, fired the first shot of the Civil War, the hero of the most important battle of the Civil War, and he also was the inventor of the cable car in San Francisco. This is your Abner Doubleday. And then in 1908, 15 years after his death, the Mills Commission, which was empowered by the Mills Commission, was a commission within Major League Baseball, and the then commissioner Spalding was the guy who said, okay, Mills Commission, get to the bottom of who founded baseball. The Mills Commission declared that Doubleday invented the game of baseball. Although Doubleday never made such a claim, the claim has been thoroughly debunked by baseball historians. So no one takes it seriously. Does anyone take this other stuff seriously? I don't know. But we can see there's a lot of mythology around this guy there. And so he's said to have invented baseball. And again, as I said, this is what Baseball Hall of Fame is literally in Cooperstown. This myth, which no one took as true, became truth in the fact that the Baseball Hall of Fame was founded there. But what they're not telling you right here in Wikipedia, in the Wikipedia version of the mythology of history, was that Abner Doubleday was the international vice president of the Theosophical Society and the interim president as well. And they don't tell you that Spalding, the guy who is behind the whole sort of making the Doubleday myth come into existence and then claim it to be true, that Spalding was also a prominent member of the Theosophical Society. So another way of saying this, as opposed to, Spalding just saying he was delighted that an American general was the guy who invented baseball, maybe a more accurate way would be saying a prominent member of the Theosophical Society named that the former president of the Theosophical Society invented baseball. So, what's the Theosophical Society? I'm assuming most of you guys are familiar with it. much of modern New Age thought was first introduced to mainstream American and Western consciousness through the Theosophical Society. The Theosophical Society's objective was to teach occultism through the Kabbalah, ancient Egyptian mysticism, and Vedic philosophy. Theosophical Society was formed in 1875 by H.P. Blavatsky. The Society's initial objective was to study an elucidation of occultism, the Kabbalah, etc. So, I've used this slide many times over the years. Let's see this. I think that says 20. I'm curious right here. Let's go look at this. I made this slide in 2016. So I've been, talking about this for quite some period of time. There's H.P. Blavatsky, Spalding, Abner Doubleday, Stephen Clark plays into it. We're not going to go into him right now. But so let's go back. Let's go back here. So Doubleday Field is the mythical first baseball diamond, the home of Doubleday Field. Doubleday Field is renowned the world over, a recognizable name to baseball fans, despite the fact that it's nestled in the center of a village of only 2,000 inhabitants. But in Cooperstown, it has remained on what was once a cow pasture owned by Elihu Finney, the hallowed ground for more than 8 decades. And here's a picture of Doubleday Field in 1919, and they're playing baseball on it. That's what the picture says, at least. And so it says, this tenor guy came to Cooperstown. He was also an executive in Major League Baseball, 1906, and he visited the Finney lot, the plot of ground once believed to have been used as Doubleday and other Cooperstown schoolboys to play the first game of baseball in 1839. And this guy, tenor, suggested that the cow pasture be turned into a memorial to Doubleday, and then became Doubleday Field. So, thoroughly debunked by baseball historians. There's no Doubleday. Doubleday didn't invent the baseball game. Yet despite that being known, that doesn't stop everyone saying like, oh, well, this is Doubleday Field. This is where the first game of baseball took place. So there's this kind of like almost like Disneyland acceptance of history and life. We know that Doubleday didn't invent baseball here. We know he didn't do that, but we're going to act like he did, and we're going to treat it as if. And as we're about to get deep into baseball, we're going to see that baseball is a very, very deep esoteric, activity, as indicated, or what I'm going to demonstrate hopefully is like at least supported by the fact that a prominent theosophist named the former president of the Theosophical Society, these being esoteric organizations, as the inventor of baseball. And in the realms of occultism or esotericism, things are connected through consciousness, through energy, through symbol. Exactly what I'm saying this whole sort of link between Hispaniola and the Susquehanna River are. And if you're telling me that this is the home of the very first baseball field or the very first baseball diamond, and we've got baseball diamonds which for more or less have the same geometric qualities found throughout the world, all of these baseball diamonds, regardless of what baseball is, are connected, and all of that somehow is flowing back to this field. Where's this field? Right here is the start of the Susquehanna River. Right here is Baseball Hall of Fame Museum, and right here we find Doubleday Field. So then that leads to the question, what is baseball? From a deeper perspective, the national pastime, if you're pastime, you're eternal. The national pastime is a living fertility ritual with overt Freemasonic symbols and covert theosophical textures linked through number and geometry. I would even suggest, so the whole idea within the Susquehanna mystery is that the river itself ties back into the ancient practice of river goddess worship. The Susquehanna River being the oldest river on the planet, and if I get really deep into what the Susquehanna mystery is, it ties into Enochian magic as well. But you'll have to look at other videos to go down that line of thought. It's a fertility ritual, and a fertility ritual is to bring something manifest. And so the whole idea is that you put the first fruits upon an altar so that those first fruits will propagate and multiply. That's the logic behind it. And by putting at the source of the Susquehanna River a living fertility ritual, in the most basic sense, and then marked by the Hall of Fame, which is like the Hall of Ascended Masters, there's this, esoterically speaking, there is a constant refueling through unconscious activity of proliferation. So let's go a little bit deeper into that. Lots have been written about baseball as an esoteric ritual. Like, that idea didn't begin with me. Here's a real interesting article you could find online, The Diamond Way, Baseball is an Esoteric Ritual. A short essay, and it's written very, pro-Masonic, very pro-Masonic. Lots has been written about baseball, which is very anti or counter-Masonic. I've talked about this in other videos too. I did a video years ago with Ross Ben, which is still out there, where we were talking about baseball, and I went into some things in baseball, which I'm not necessarily covering here. In light of this Masonic connection in baseball, and what I covered in part 1 of this video series here, when I talked about Baron Samedi, I found this throughout the internet, that he's the Grand Master of the Celestial Masonic Lodge of Voodoo Spirits. I got no idea what that even means. But there is a Masonic connection there, with Baron Samedi being more or less the gatekeeper of Hades, or the underworld of Hispaniola, or as I'm just kind of spitballing this right now, there's a pun for you. Maybe Haiti represents more of the death part of the underworld, and the Dominican side is more of the rebirth, as we're seeing through the immense proliferation of baseball players. And wait till part 3 when I'm going to go and show you what proliferated there. But anyway, so we've got this going on as well. Baseball is a fertility rite. This has been brought up by other people. Idle Ruminations by John Thorne, I think that is. Fertility and the Evolution of Ball Games, the Ancient Ritual of Sport rides on. The idea of sport being a ritual, and then even more significantly, the idea of sport being a fertility ritual, because they're not every ritual is a fertility ritual. That idea is not being originated by me. I'm just pointing it out for you guys, so you can see what exactly is marking this territory of the Susquehanna River and this connection with Hispaniola. So baseball is a fertility ritual. Baseball can be thought of as the sacred marriage, also known as Heros Gamos. Heros Gamos is the sacred marriage that takes place between gods, especially when enacted in a symbolic ritual where human participants represent the deities. Typically, Heros Gamos refers to ritualistic sex with an audience, but we're dealing with symbolic ritual. Anytime we're dealing with masculine and feminine forces coming together, we're dealing with the same thing, whether it's ritualistic sex or a baseball diamond. We're still dealing with the same idea of two opposites producing a third. Heros gamos, often used interchangeably with coniunctio. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. The hero gamos is recognized as the highest form of the union of opposites, the king and the queen, in the alchemical opus. These are magical operations, or the logic behind it. Like, the reason why we do this the way which we do this is because we are looking to create a specific result through the realm, or through the workings of the unmanifested. And where does the unmanifested live? The unmanifested lives in the underworld. Heros means sacred. Now, gamos doesn't mean game, but it certainly sounds like game. So, baseball's Hall of Fame, the sacred game of baseball, is revered in Cooperstown. We've got this sacred game. And baseball is, Heros gamos is typically thought of as a ritualistic, witnessed sex ritual. And though baseball is not overtly sexual, it is kind of covertly. And one of the ways it shows itself is, like, baseball metaphors have been used for sexual encounters. And, it says first prevalent after World War II. So there's built into the culture already is the understanding that baseball is the sacred marriage, and there are sexual connotations built into the game. But let's go a step deeper. Baseball is a goddess-ruled sacred game, as the catcher is the most important position. So two things. One, the Susquehanna mystery is ultimately a river goddess or goddess worship practice, though it's all done primarily through male organizations. And so also, when we think of often, or if you do a little bit of research on the sacred marriage, it seems to primarily be most prevalent with the king. So there's this obvious, or at least on the surface, this is masculine oriented or dominated or driven, but the truth of the matter is it's about goddess, it's about receptive, it's about the woman. And we can see that again in baseball, like in the literal setup of baseball, because in baseball, the catcher is the most important position. And I suppose that's a little bit subjective, particularly to people who are like into baseball and want to say, like, they'll come up with another reason why a different position may be the most important. Probably the pitcher, right? The most dominant masculine force, it would be the pitcher. But the reason why I would say the catcher is the most dominant is because of this, what we can see from this picture right here, this perspective. The catcher is who has this view that no one else has. The catcher sees what the rest of the team does. The catcher directs the pitcher. The catcher directs where people are going to position themselves. And the catcher is the woman. She's the queen. She's the yin. I mean, we could look at it from this way, like baseball positions are used as coded references to the roles played by men who have sex with other men, where the catcher is literally the receptive partner, right? The feminine. But maybe a little bit more obvious and less metaphorical is the catcher literally stands in birth position, right? The catcher is in birth position. And from the legs of the catcher, the catcher is right here, everything comes out. Everything comes out. So when I say a living ritual, like the participants and the fans, the observers that are watching it, they are living a symbolic ritual, which is all flowing back to the source location of the oldest river on the planet. Like, that's literally happening. But we're going to go deeper with this because it's just so, it's when you begin to pull on the string, when you begin to like pull on this thread of what's going on with baseball and the people who are involved, and then, you know, this statistically disproportionate expression of the most elite baseball players or the best baseball players in the world coming from Hispaniola. It's just, you know, it's almost funny. So, all right. In the sacred game, the ball is the key, and the ball is ascribed with 108 stitches. So 108 stitches are in a regulation baseball. So 108 is a sacred number. If that's new to you, you might want to pause it and go and verify it. There's lots and lots of articles which demonstrate why 108 is significant. Some of them are like really objective in terms of like the factors of 108 and, you know, the mathematics of it, and then some, and others are other examples of why 108 is a sacred number are more tied into certain belief systems. Right here in this particular thing, which I have right here, where it's talking about 108, it's talking about the number 108 has been highly revered for thousands of years, coveted by many spiritual traditions, and ascribed special significance in meditation and prayer, considered to be the most auspicious of all. 108 happens to be the number of stitches in a baseball. I wonder if they did that poetically on purpose. Probably. In yoga, the number 108 refers to spiritual completions. You can see they talk about postures, and they talk about like breath and all sorts of stuff. With 108 here in here within this article, but you'll understand why I made that reference in a moment. But before that, I want to go and answer this question. It's like, well, how did a baseball get 108 stitches? You're like, okay, well, a baseball has 108 stitches, and yeah, the baseball has. We can see how baseball is a fertility ritual, a Masonic fertility ritual, which has also like theosophical touches as well. Well, where did the baseball come from? Well, the origin of the official Major League Baseball, it came from A.G. Spalding brothers in 1876. Albert Spalding's Albert Spalding Sporting Good Company. This is one of the reasons he became rich, and he was able to go and buy into the Chicago White Stockings, because he got Major League Baseball to buy all the baseballs from him. He, the same guy, remember, the same guy who declared that baseball was invented by Abner Doubleday, is the same guy who is responsible for the baseball and the 108 stitches. So let's go back to 108 again. 108 is the holiest number in Hinduism. The Vedic cosmology states the diameter of the sun is 108 times that of the earth. The distance between the earth and the sun is 100 times the diameter of the sun. The distance between the earth and the moon is 108 times the diameter of the moon. I don't know if any of that's accurate or not. I don't know the numbers, or like the mathematics. I don't know how far any of this, the planets or the heavenly bodies are. But what we do know is that 108 is tied into Vedic cosmology. It represents our universe. And remember, I just showed you all of the stuff with 108 and the yoga poses. Here we see Fibonacci. He posited that he had a theory that the number 108 always represents wholeness of existence. We've got 108. We've got showing itself as being immensely significant from all of these different sort of angles. We go and we see that Albert Spalding, the same guy, is behind the baseball in the 108, and Spalding was a theosophist, and Blavatsky, the founder of the Theosophical Society, once she steps down from her role in New York City, passes the baton to Abner Doubleday. She then goes and moves the international headquarters to Madras, which is in India. So Theosophy, is steep in Vedic cosmology and Vedic teachings. That's part of the theosophical teaching. A little bit more about 108. Here's an article about the 15 fastest pitches ever recorded from like a baseball pitcher who throws it, and they got a radar gun. What's the fastest pitch? 108 miles per hour. That's kind of funny. In a baseball game, there are 54 outs. Like, I didn't even go into 3 strikes, you're out, and 3 outs per side in an inning and 9 innings. That's been covered by a lot of other people, and particularly in the articles, which I pointed out a little bit earlier about the Masonic connections with baseball. But baseball has something which is known as a double header, or a Doubleday header. And when you include the Doubleday header, you got 54 outs in a regular baseball game, and a double header, you've got 108 outs. Since we're on the topic of double headers, there are other types of double headers, like this double header right here, for 32-degree Freemasons. This double header going back, so they tell us to ancient Turkey. My personal favorite double header is the Herkimer diamond, which is a double terminated crystal in Herkimer County. Very, very unique. A quartz that forms naturally with 2 terminated ends, or 2 terminated 2 heads, if you will, and they're very rare in nature. And these ones are only found in Herkimer, New York, and what does it say that? And the surrounding areas. So just pointing out, here's Herkimer, New York, and this is the surrounding areas. Oh, look, here's the Baseball Hall of Fame. But, let's go switch gears. We're getting ready to, we're on the downslope right now, but we still have some really some ties to bring to the surface. So baseball is tied to magic in a different way in the collective culture, and it's normally thought of as the superstitions used by the different players. Baseball players are notorious for their superstitions. Baseball is a game for their superstitions, and so that's often thought of as baseball magic. But in this article, which I found, I didn't know this until doing this research for this presentation, and this presentation is in context of the relationship between Hispaniola and baseball. I guess I did know this because we see in the movie Major League Baseball that there's, for those of you who remember this, Major League Baseball was a film that came out in 1989 about baseball, and one of the characters was he practiced. He was a Cuban who left Cuba to seek freedom to practice his religion of Voodoo, and there was this correspondence through this movie between between Haitian Voodoo. I guess if he's Cuban, it would be Santeria, but they're calling it Voodoo here. But nonetheless, we kind of know what I'm talking about. There's a link between baseball. This is the first place I became aware of it, between baseball and the religion tied to Hispaniola. And then, lo and behold, as I'm doing research, I didn't realize that the whole idea or at least there's a theory which seems to be grounded in some truth. And the more I do this research, the more accurate it seems. It's that the idea of rooting, like, take me out to the ball game, take me out for, take me out to the ball game, take me out to the, I don't know what the next word is. Anyway, buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever come back. Root for the home team. This is reference to root work and voodoo, where within the practice of voodoo, root work is done as a way to bring energy to a particular, to something else. Like, it's a magical practice. Now, the author of this article, this is how he concludes. So the jury's still out. The widespread use of lucky roots and the pre-existing voodoo-related sense of root, meaning to cast a spell using magical roots, suggests a plausible origin of the slang word root, as described in 1889. So rooting came out like as an idea in the American lexicon in 1889. But the guy's like, well, maybe it's not that. And who knows? But stick with me here. This is fascinating. When we begin to look on a larger scale of baseball and rooting and its connection with Hispaniola going both ways, I just want to bring into the idea of, the quote-unquote notorious voodoo curse, right? Haiti and the voodoo curse. And the voodoo curses keep victims of trafficking under bondage. I'm by no means the person to speak about voodoo curses because I'm not knowledgeable of it, other than the fact that I'm aware of voodoo curses as a concept that are introduced within the collective consciousness. So that being said, we got to go and look at this. Notorious within baseball is the idea of the curse of the billy goat. One of the greatest curses in modern sports was born as the Chicago Cubs went on to lose the 1945 World Series. The curse of the billy goat was a sports curse that supposedly plagued the Chicago Cubs from winning the World Series, and it started in 1945. It's pet goat, and it deals with the pet goat. We're already 56 minutes into it, so I could probably go down and riff on like the pet goat and a whole bunch of other things, but I'm going to keep it focused. Within Haiti and voodoo, ritual goat sacrifices is a thing. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that the curse of the billy goat is an actual voodoo curse placed upon the Chicago Cubs, in the same way that I'm not exactly saying that 444 and 333 and 123 and 123 was put there purposefully as some sort of coding. But what I am saying is, like, as we're looking deeper and deeper into these connections, or the relationship of these connections, there's more and more evidence, more and more smoking guns, if you will, which just shows that this is a circulation loop. And I like this juxtaposition of this Chicago Cubs fan holding a goat in the white right here, and we've got the goat right here in Haiti, and all these guys in white, and it's just a funny juxtaposition. But where this gets really, really funny is this, because this brings us right back to 108 and Spalding again, because the Chicago Cubs, which this greatest curse in modern sports history connects directly to Albert Spalding. Well, first we'll do 108. When the curse was broken, because in 2016 the Chicago Cubs finally won the World Series. The whole idea of the curse was that the Chicago Cubs would never win a World Series when they didn't win it in 1945. But they were already on they already were on a drought. They hadn't won the World Series for a long time, and they eventually won the World Series in 2016. And when they won it, it was the first time in 108 years, and the Cubs' win came in the 10th inning with 8 runs, another 108. When this happened, there was all of this talk in like the baseball world about like 108 and curses and stuff like that. But we want to keep in mind that after his retirement as a player in 1876, Spalding remained active and part owner of the Chicago White Stockings, who became the Chicago Cubs. And to make it even more interesting, Spalding, the Theosophist who claimed or confirmed that Abner Doubleday, the former president of the Theosophical Society, invented baseball at the headwaters of the Susquehanna River, whose company is also responsible for the 108 stitches within the baseball. Albert Spalding brothers had an office in Chicago where they were headquartered, and then they moved to 108 Madison Avenue. That was like their actual address. So, that's in play. And, I began this one section of the conversation about like root for the home team. And maybe it's that connects directly to the voodoo practice of root working. And then, cursing is, the voodoo curse is a thing in concept, I suppose. And there really was a correlation between a goat and a curse and a baseball team. But then they all link back through the guy where this all originates with anyway. And it gets very, very hard to deny when looking at all of this evidence that there are links. There are links. And what those links are, part of that is, I guess, for your own exploration to ask about what is the nature of reality, and how it works. Not so much about like, what do I do with baseball games? Maybe that's a question you ask yourself, but that's not what this is about. This isn't about like becoming paranoid as to the world's ruled by esoteric forces and structures. I mean, that's the truth all around us. It's just becoming more and more aware of how effective that is. And, the Dominican Republic and its statistical rarity of producing so many elite baseball players, after I've established that there is a mythological link between those two, the Susquehanna River and Hispaniola, we're working with something which certainly seems to be real. Wait till you see part 3, where I'm going to bring into play probably the most tangible of material manifestation, which is a stone, a crystal, which is only found on Hispaniola, and how it was predicted by, another seeming theosophist connected directly to the Susquehanna River. But I'm going to conclude this video right now with this. In 1888, same year they say that root enters our lexicon, H.P. Blavatsky publishes possibly her most famous work, The Secret Doctrine, where she really goes into a lot of the detail of the theosophical explanation and cosmology of reality. Let's see what it says right here. It was an influential example of the revival interest in esoteric and occult ideas in the modern age, in particular because of its claim to reconcile ancient Eastern wisdom with modern science, Proponents widely claim the literature contains clues as to how the nature of prayer was covered and expunged from common wisdom, except for those with a keen eye. I've never read The Secret Doctrine. I don't have anything to say on the matter, other than the fact that I know that it's significant within the Theosophical world. That same year, 1888, is when Albert Spalding, he led something known as the Spalding World Tour, which was an exhibition baseball tournament that circumnavigated the globe from 1888 to 1889. And here's a picture of it, of the guys playing baseball here in front of the Great Pyramid, Cheops. It stands as a distant backdrop behind home plate with the Sphinx down the third base line right here. So this will tie into part 3 as well. So with that, my friends, this was a long journey. At the end of the day, this is just a demonstration of the nature of reality, so that we, as students of life, seekers of freedom, and what that freedom is freedom from the invisible ties of paradigm and of sense of self, can the more clear we can see how the things work, the more clear we know the environment in which we're working. For those of you who are interested in direct correspondence, or even more importantly, like working directly with me with Starboard sessions and so forth, reach out through email, and we will go forward with that. That being said, thank you very much, and keep your eyes peeled for number 3.